Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Aging with Equity, Housing Stability, and Generational Wealth for Senior Homeowners. And I'm Shauna LaRue-Marai. I lead the ICF team. I'm so pleased to be back with you all for today's conversation. So I think folks know how Zoom works in terms of the technology. If you have any technical questions, we have John Panetti who's here, who's going to help you in the chat box. And then there will be some time for Q&A. And so please use the Q&A. And other than that, you're in listen only mode. So just sit back and relax for today's presentation. We did want to make sure that we got to know you and what you're doing with senior homeowners across your service area. So we do want to go to Mentimeter. And my colleague, Karen Hoskins, is going to put the Mentimeter link in the chat box and also provide you with the code. And it's the same code as this morning. So if you still have your phone on you, if you still have it open in a browser, but we want to know, does your agency provide reverse mortgage housing counseling or any other educational supports for senior homeowners? So this is our time to hear from you through the platform about your great work in reverse mortgage counseling, or maybe you're doing other education, other supports. You might be doing both. And then some of you may be not doing it at this time, but you're very interested. And this is why you're here potentially. So I'd really like to get to know you. This is the first of two Mentimeter questions that Karen and I and all the panelists thought that would be really helpful to get to know you. So I'm seeing overwhelmingly, I'm seeing most of you provide other education support systems, or you're interested in designing a program. So we're so glad that you're here. And we're going to talk a lot about reverse mortgage today and offer you some support as well. So I'll just give it another maybe 20 seconds, and then I'll move ahead to the second question that we have on our minds today. And thanks so much, Karen, for putting the link in the chat box. There's also materials for the entire conference that Karen also can put in the chat box, just so you can grab the PowerPoints for today's presentation, as well as any of the other presentations. They're also in Six Connect, but we thought we would also make sure they're memorialized on the HUD Exchange. So still seeing overwhelmingly other education, other support programs, and folks that are interested in developing a program. So I'm going to go ahead and move us forward. And then this is our second question. What would be of the most benefit to either enhance or develop reverse mortgage or other support programs for seniors? We have answers around additional funding, staffing, marketing, outreach, and others that just want to improve their partnerships and able to serve those in their service area who are seniors. So we'll kind of go to our magical number about 150, I think came in last time, Karen, but really interesting. It's almost split. And I think I gave the option you could select all. So some of you may be selecting all, which we'll be able to see in our database behind this when we take a look at it later. So we really want to know from you, what would be the most beneficial? Do you need funding? Do you need staff? Do you need marketing and outreach support? Or do you need partnerships? So you could do some referrals to other agencies. We did see that there is a discussion board on this topic. We saw at least one person in my home state of Ohio, which is where I'm based, looking for more reverse mortgage housing counseling agencies out there. So that might be, somebody you want to partner with, or maybe you want to see where the gap is and provide your own services there in your service area. So I'm still seeing very much a split, but overwhelmingly, it looks like more funding seems to be winning out, and also improved partnerships, Karen. So we'll just let some more of those results come in. And I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint, and I'm so delighted to welcome Karen Hoskins. She's on our technical assistance team, and I know many of you know her. So I will turn it over to Karen to get us started with our agenda.
Great. Thanks, Shauna. Hello, everyone. As she said, I'm Karen Hoskins, and I'm with ICF, and I'll be your moderator for this session. And it's certainly our hope that the information shared in this conversation will be informative and useful in your work with older adults and helping them navigate financial decisions where the equity they have in their homes might represent a solution. So let's take a look at our agenda. Our speaker from Consumer Financial Protection Bureau will give us an overview of older adult homeownership. We'll also be hearing more about CFPB's housing decision guides. And then after that, we'll have some discussion with our speakers, including gaining the perspective from two housing counseling agencies that provide counseling services for senior homeowners. There will be tools and resources shared. And before we end, we'll allow some time for audience questions. Our speakers today are Cora Hume. Cora is an attorney with the Office of Financial Protection for Older Americans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. Jackie Boys is Senior Director for Partner Relations with Money Management International, MMI. And also Angela Davidson is Program Director at Neighborhood Housing Services in Brooklyn, New York. To get us started, Cora Hume from CFPB will give us an overview of adult homeownership and what the Bureau is doing in support of helping seniors make sound financial decisions. So, Cora?
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm really looking forward to being here. I'm a former legal aid attorney out of Maryland, and I worked with housing counselors all the time, and you're such a great resource. So it's really my pleasure to be here. I'm going to start, as Karen said, by talking about older adults and housing. And my first slide talks about that most older adults own their homes. As you can see, about 80% own their own homes. So we're talking about someone we know, our parents, our grandparents, our neighbors, someone we know and love own their own homes and are aging in their homes. And really the question that we're going to talk about today is what happens to equity as people age? What are their thoughts on it? What do they do with it? Where are their pain points? So as you can see here, the home is, as you know, as a housing counselor, is the most valuable asset. It goes beyond other kinds of assets that older adults have in terms of retirement funds and stocks. In 2019, it's about 20% of all assets held by consumers aged 65 and older were in their home. And that's about $9 trillion. So that's the last data point we have was in 2019. So we're talking about a lot of money here. And as also, you know, as housing counselors, not only is the home the largest asset, but it's also the largest expense. So, you know, when older adults move into retirement and are on fixed incomes, the housing costs don't necessarily change. In fact, they often can go up in terms of taxes and insurance. So we know that it's a large chunk of older adults' expenses. About a quarter of older homeowners spend a third of their income on housing. And we know that many older adults are carrying mortgages into retirement, unlike earlier generations. So as the baby boomers age, we know that they are not as likely to have pensions. There are retirement shortfalls that they're facing. And so the home, being the largest asset, can also be their lifeline, their safety net. So we need to recognize that the home is, for many of us, seen as a safety net. So we also know that many older adults want to age in place. 90% want to stay in their homes. 80% believe it's going to be where they'll always live. And really the question, though, is, despite that desire, is it physically, financially feasible to age in place? And aging in place can mean in the home that they're presently in, or it can mean that they downsize into a smaller home. But it's really to stay within the community is how we're defining aging in place. And one thing that people, think about or don't think about when they're saying, I want to age in place is, as they age, their needs, their healthcare needs, their mobility needs are going to change. And how do they pay for staying in their home? Do they have long-term care insurance? Are they planning on a family member moving in and caring for them, or not moving in, but still caring for them? And have they had a conversation with that family member about caregiving? So aging in place is a costly endeavor, can be. And so how are they going to pay for it, despite their desire? So it's a complicated issue that's not only emotional, but also physical and financial. So let's talk about the next slide where the Bureau kind of dug into this issue. So knowing that that this is the landscape we have in terms of aging in place, homes being the largest asset, the homes being the largest expense, we did, if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so we did some research on this. So back in 2019, the CFPB began digging into this issue. We did a resource scan and looked at 150 different resources out there to identify gaps in what's out there, and the strengths, and what tools were out there. And then we also did interviews. So we interviewed not only older adult homeowners, but their family members and intermediaries, like housing counselors, to talk about how housing decisions are made. Where are their pain points? What have they thought of? And probably not surprising to you, many older adults haven't thought about what to do with their housing as they age. Many of them are caught off guard when there's a change in circumstances, whether it's health or death of a spouse. They don't have a plan. And so with that in mind, we're like, well, we should try to provide some resources out there for older adults to help them navigate this space. And we saw when we did their environmental scan that there are lots of resources out there that were on one specific product, like reverse mortgages, let's say, or a home equity line of credit. But there was nothing out there that provided a big view of all the options so that an older homeowner or their family member could start making decisions that were based, after seeing all the options, what was best for that individual older adult. So we came up with 4 housing decision guides. These are just-in-time resources. We, through our research, realized that there weren't a lot of just-in-time resources out there to meet older consumers at known pain points in the aging process. So we developed these 4, using home equity to meet financial needs, death of a spouse, change in healthcare. And we heard from a lot of people, their desire to leave their homes to their heirs or their children. And so how to navigate that space. When we developed these guides, we hired outside help to help draft the content. We had national experts weigh in on the content, both in consumer and the aging world. We translated these 4 guides into 8 different languages in addition to English. We have made them available for download. So if you're in your office and someone comes in who needs a specific guide, you can just go and find them quickly. But you can also order them for free in print, and you can order them in bulk packaging. I think it's in 25. So those are all available. And we just got approved to do co-branding with these. So we want to get them out to as many people as possible. So you can slap on your logo to any of these guides or all of these guides and have it co-branded with your agency. Again, to have a trusted resource in the community who's handing these out is key. And so co-branding, we hope, will really reach those in the community who need these resources the most. So I'm going to dig now or explain a little bit on each guide, just to give you a highlight of what's in them. So we know that, losing a spouse or a partner is a life-altering experience, and really can change the trajectory of housing decisions. So we created this guide. It helps owners consider their options as they determine whether staying in their home makes sense. And we know that it's emotional, so we address some emotional questions. We address some physical questions in this guide, and we also address some financial questions. So there's lots of prompts in this guide to spur the older adult to think about these on their own time. So we recognize saying, please, this is a difficult time, take a deep breath. Here are some things to think about. Don't make any quick decisions. But for example, with the emotional aspect, does the home bring fond memories, or is it creating a sense of loss? If you move, will it move you farther away from family and friends who provide support, or move you closer to them? So those are the kind of emotional prompts we give. In terms of physical, was your spouse your caregiver? Did your spouse maintain the home and the yard? Do you have difficulty running everyday chores, like to the grocery store, to the pharmacy? Are there grab bars? Do you have difficulty climbing steps? Those kind of questions were for the physical, are part of the physical prompts. And then we have the financial prompts. A loss of a partner often means loss of an income. Can you afford to stay in the home? And what does that mean for you? How can you make ends meet? What happens if you can't afford? What are your choices? So that's what the guides go into. We provide resources in this guide about budgeting, how to get help in terms of modifying a home. And we also refer people to housing counselors to have conversations with housing counselors about weighing their options. In fact, in every single of our guides, we highlight housing counselors as a great resource for people to reach out to get the support and information they need. And at the end of every guide, I should say, there's a whole page or multiple pages of resources that people can go to. And that's where we provide information on the HUD certified housing counseling agencies. So that's the loss of a spouse guide. Moving on to the healthcare decisions guide. We also know that healthcare changes can really change the trajectory of where people live. And so this guide helps address whether the person is facing an imminent healthcare change or is in that crisis now. It meets them where they're at. And it helps older adults consider what their options are. And it provides a checklist in terms of needs for change in health. For example, there's a chart about medical and non-medical needs, what those entail, and where the person might think about where they fall in terms of medical, where people need to come in and dispense medicine, provide wound care, or non-medical, providing help with daily living, or transportation or cooking. So those we distinguish in this guide. And then we discuss options for moving, whether that is, or housing arrangements. So whether it's aging in place in your home, but also moving in with family. We talk about assisted living and the details on moving into assisted living, moving into CCRs, which are continuing care communities or residences, which provides, independent living all the way into nursing home care, and then nursing home care. So we dive into all those issues in this guide, again, meeting the older adult at a known pain point of home ownership and aging. Okay, then we move on to home equity to meet financial needs. We know, as I mentioned, older adults and the baby boomers, as they're moving into retirement and aging, there are going to be retirement shortfalls, and the home being a financial safety net. So as you can see here on the left part of the slide, we lay out issues that or options that the older homeowner can have. So we talk about cash out refinances, we talk about home equity loans, we talk about home equity lines of credit, and we talk about reverse mortgages. And in this chart, you can see that for each topic talk about eligibility, how the homeowner may receive money through this kind of product, whether they're monthly payments, and what happens to the loan balance over time. So again, this guide provides a big picture of options so that an older adult and their family members can decide what might be the best fit given their situation. And lastly, The fourth guide is leaving the home to the children or heirs. We know older adults want to leave their home often to their children or heirs. And what does this mean? And so we go through again, providing the big picture options and then where to look for assistance. We talk about wills, we talk about gifting the home, we talk about trust, both living and irrevocable. And we talk about a transfer of deed, a death deed, which is available in a limited number of states. And in those products, we talk about the tax implications, how this might affect Medicaid eligibility. And we also flag that people might want to talk about these decisions with who they're considering to be their heir, who will get the home, and see what they want to do with the home. If my parents called, they're going to ask, do you want to sell? Will you sell the home if you get it? Will you keep the home? And that might influence an older adult's decision making. So this is all of these are complicated topics, but this one in particular, is heavily has some heavy legal implications. And so one of our biggest advice is, seek out an attorney, but we also, talk about housing counselors and other resources out there to help older adults navigate these decisions. So those are the 4 guides. We're really excited about them. Here's where you can find them. You can take a picture of the QRL. We also have a vanity URL that makes it easy to find. It's consumerfinance.gov housing decisions. Again, they're available for download. The translation should be up on our website already, and you can order them now for getting them shipped for free to your offices. So we really hope that these are great resources. We welcome your feedback, not only today, but in the future. We want these to really help older adults use their home equity. So we look forward to sharing them with your clients and your community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Cora. That's a lot of great information, and these will be great resources for Housing Counseling Agency. So just a question. What was the motivation behind CFPB deciding to create the housing decision guides? Who are they intended for? And what do you hope to achieve with them?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we were trying to fill a gap. We don't want to recreate the wheel. There's so many resources out there, we all know. But there wasn't really some guides out there for these just-in-time at these pain point meeting older homeowners where they need the information and they need it now. So and it's not just for the older homeowner. My parents are in their 80s. It's for people like me too, for the children trying to help their parents navigate this space, or if their parents aren't able to navigate the space on their behalf. So I think a lot of the audience is the children or the family members of older homeowners as well. And then for intermediaries, right? I mean, we want housing counselors, legal aid attorneys to be using this as their clients come in. And it might not be an older homeowner again. It might be, a caregiver where I'm not meeting my bills because I'm caregiving for my older parent. So there's lots of people that this can touch, because home ownership goes well beyond the person living in the home, as we all know, and has a ripple effect on all sorts of things: food availability, medications, all sorts of things that it touches on.
Great. Thank you for that. That's a lot of great information and some really great points that you've made. So thank you, Cora. And just a reminder, if you have any questions for Cora or any of our speakers today, please use the Q&A box that's located at the bottom of your screen. So now I want to invite Angela Davidson from Neighborhood Housing Services of Brooklyn and Jackie Boys with MMI to join this conversation. Thank you both for joining today. And Angela, why don't we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about your role at NHS and then describe for us a client counseling scenario where you think the housing decision guides might be helpful?
Okay, great. Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me on this panel today. And so I'm a program director at NHS Brooklyn. I'm responsible for all programs, but I'm also a reverse mortgage counselor, one of the only reverse mortgage counselor probably in New York City. And so in working with older clients, or what we call mature clients, looking at different financial decisions that they have to make as it pertains to, it could be about their housing, it could be about estate planning, as well as making medical changes or modifications to their home. So I find the housing decision guide complements the counseling that we do here, has a lot of good resources. So when we work with a homeowner trying to make a financial decision, what that decision might look like, right? It might be that somebody needs additional income because they have retired. What does that look like? Is it tapping into the equity in the home? Is it the need for repairs for resiliency purposes, making modifications in their home as they get older? They might not be able to take the stairs as much, so you might need chair lifts. So it's about tapping into your equity. And as Cora pointed out, that the housing resource guide does have that checklist and those questions. So when we're meeting, so for example, I might be counseling someone around reverse mortgage. One of the first question I have is, why a reverse mortgage? What is the reason behind applying for a reverse mortgage? And then we go into, they will start telling me, well, I retired, I don't have enough money to live on, so I need additional income, or I might have some repairs, I need to make modifications, or I'm going to have some medical bills coming up and I need money to help to pay those. So definitely the housing resource guide will help us when we are talking to clients about reverse mortgage. When we're looking at estate planning, what does that look like for a senior homeowner? Is it that they want to leave generational wealth? Is it because they need someone to for healthcare proxy reasons? Is it developing wills, trust? Is it changing a deed from a regular deed to a life estate deed, making it easier for the home to be passed on to your child if that's who you want to leave it to? So that the housing decision guide have a lot of those questions in there, and it will help the homeowner to be more educated when they're meeting with an attorney, right? It forces questions like, what is a will? What is a trust? Which one is best for me? A lot of brainstorming can be done using these decision guides, and the tools and the resources that's in there is definitely beneficial to the mature adults that we work with.
Okay, great. I appreciate your mentioning some of these issues can be complex, as you mentioned. Could be any number of reasons why some of these conversations are being had. So having those guides as a resource, it could be very helpful. Thank you for that, Angela. And welcome, Jackie. If you could tell us a little bit more about your role at MMI, and then we would appreciate your thoughts on what kinds of local partnerships or resources should agencies make sure clients have access to if they offer either reverse mortgage counseling or other support services for senior adults.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm happy to be on this panel. I am Jackie Boyce. I'm the Senior Director for Partner Relations at Money Management International. I've worked for 30 years in this industry and worked very closely with our HECM counseling team for most of those years. When I think about resources and really being able to get to the heart of the matter for a senior, one of the first things that comes to mind is that we need to have relationships with our area office on aging. So that would be my recommendation to anyone who's new to this space, or if you haven't gone out and cultivated those relationships, now would be the time. This is an agency that is really going to know what services are available to seniors in their local market. Now, that's an interesting answer coming from me because I'm MMI and we are nationwide. And so we don't have the ability to go out into every single market and create this relationship. But what we do have is a wonderful tool. So we avail ourselves of a tool called Spring 4, where our counselors are able to enter a zip code into that resource tool and find these local resources for that senior. So in conversation, as we're going through our reverse mortgage counseling session, we can dial right into those local resources to connect our seniors with those folks. Another thing that comes to mind is what we're seeing today in the growth in proprietary reverse mortgages. You know, before we all knew about HECM, we all did HECM counseling, and that was the reverse mortgage. But over the last few years, the growth in proprietary reverse mortgages has been phenomenal. And so while we have to have arm's length relationships with lenders, it's important to have a point of contact that you can trust and talk to about proprietary reverse mortgages. Responsible lenders are still asking us to do counseling for these loans. And so we need to understand them. And when we don't, because they can be quite complex, we need good resources to go out and talk to them, and also to offer feedback on the experience that we have with the seniors who are coming in wanting to get a proprietary reverse mortgage. So I think those are two things that would be really meaningful for someone getting into this space.
Okay, that's great information. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
And so, Angela, just going back to you for a second, can you talk for a minute about some examples of when a reverse mortgage can be a senior homeowner's best option?
Okay, thanks, Karen. So for someone who might have retired where income has reduced, there is an existing mortgage. And because that income has reduced, there is not enough income to make that mortgage payment. That might be one option where a reverse mortgage might be the best option if that person wants to stay in place and not move out. Right? All the memories, as Cora spoke about earlier, all their memories were created there. And so they want to stay there. So that's one instance when income has been reduced and you don't have enough to make that mortgage payment, prevent the home from going into foreclosure. You might want to consider a reverse mortgage at that time. As you know, you won't have a mortgage payment monthly. You do have your taxes, insurance, and depending on where you live, might be water as well, to have income to make those payments, right? So, just a reduction in income from possibly retirement or the death of a spouse or the death of someone who might have been helping out. Their income was a part of the household income.
Okay. And with that, are there scenarios where you would sort of readily identify that a reverse mortgage might not be the best option? And if, those cases ever come up, what other alternatives do you recommend when that happens?
Right. So there are times when a reverse mortgage will not work for someone. And again, it goes back to income, because you have to be able to maintain the home. You have to be able to pay your monthly costs in terms of insurance, your taxes, and your water. And there's sometimes when homeowners do not have income that can meet the requirements. So one of the things we might consider, and we'll discuss senior housing. Is it assisted living? Or independent living? Is there a family member that you can move in with, right? Is selling and moving the best option for you? So oftentimes when a reverse mortgage will not work for someone is because the income is not there, or there might also not be enough income to have someone help to take care of your monthly expenses, because as you get older, or there might be medical issues where you're not able to go out and take care of things on your own. So if there's not enough money to manage those monthly expenses, then a reverse mortgage might not be the best option for someone.
Okay, great. And Jackie, just going back to you, adult children can often play a huge role in some of these conversations involving the equity that their parents have in their home. What do you think about the role of adult children in these conversations? And do you ever recommend that they join a reverse mortgage counseling session?
Definitely. We definitely recommend that adult children or another trusted advisor participate in counseling where it's appropriate and the senior wants that kind of support. One of the things I love about these decision guides is that it will help us help these seniors step through and think about some of these things. It's great when a senior comes to us and they've already had these conversations with their family, that they have talked about heirship and what's going to happen with their home. But sometimes those are sticky conversations when they've not had that conversation. And we want to help them through it. And I think one of these decision guides would be very, very helpful in fostering that conversation.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for that input. It's really great to hear the housing counseling agency perspective on some of this. And so with that, I also want to invite Cora, if you wouldn't mind rejoining us.
Karen, can I make 2 comments? One is that I misspoke, and I apologize. The translated versions of the guides won't be available till the end of the month, so they're still being reviewed. So I just wanted to let people know that.
Great, I'm glad you made that clarification. That's great.
And then I just also wanted to make a plug. So we have these 4 just-in-time guides, but we also have a ton of resources on reverse mortgages. So if you go to consumerfinance.gov/reverse mortgage, you'll find we have a reverse mortgage discussion guide that is was intended for housing counselors to sit down with their clients and walk through a reverse mortgage. What is a reverse mortgage? A guide that provides graphics and explains what a reverse mortgage is and how it works, so housing counselors can sit down with their clients and do that. And then once the client has a reverse mortgage, we have the reverse mortgage discussion guide that talks about pain points like taxes, occupancy. So those are 2 great guides for housing counselors, and there's a video. You can also show your clients a 2-minute video. That's a great opening in terms of reverse mortgages. So we have these guides, and then we have the reverse mortgage resources.
Okay, and I was just going to ask you, was there anything that you wanted to add in response to anything specific that Angela and Jackie may have mentioned here? Anything additional before we go and see what questions are available, have come in from our audience?
I think I just wanted to highlight that for the CFPB, we don't opine whether a reverse mortgage is a good or bad product. It really is dependent on the individual situation. For some people it makes sense, and for others it doesn't. What is key is that the person understands what a reverse mortgage is, because we get plenty of complaints coming into the bureau where clearly the person doesn't understand the product that they've signed up for, and they're like, well, I want to leave the house that my heirs, and that might not be, if that's their primary goal, a reverse mortgage won't make sense. So really it's a complicated product. And even for those of us who've worked in this space for many years. And so really trying to break it down into something that the consumer is making a decision that eyes wide open, that's the product they want, I think is key.
That's a great point. I can remember earlier in my career being a reverse mortgage counselor and having conversations with seniors about the equity in their home. And those conversations at times can be very challenging to have, to be able to get the client to understand complex processes and procedures, and the mortgage process that's involved with obtaining a reverse mortgage. So again, the more resources that are available to support those conversations, the better. So thank you all for this conversation. It's been very insightful. We do have a couple questions that have come into the Q&A box. Cora, I think you just a second ago mentioned that one of the guides could be helpful with adults struggling with their property taxes. Did I understand that correctly? Do you want to point out more specifics about that?
So we don't dive in the guides up too much on taxes because it's so state specific. and these guides are supposed to be for everyone in every state. We don't really navigate that space. I hear you that it's a real issue, paying taxes. We do point people to resources that might be able to help older homeowners pay for their taxes if they're not on a yearly basis, but if they're in a real jam, where they can look for assistance. There are all sorts of funds out there, but we don't dive into state-specific tax issues.
Okay, okay. And are any of the guides helpful in a homeowner weighing their options with respect to perhaps doing a cash out refinance or some other type of or traditional refinance? Are any of the guides supportive of those conversations is a question.
I think so. I don't remember if there's a cash out refinance. I think it's in making your ends meet. Angela's saying there is. Yeah. So we do talk about cash out refinancing. And of course, these guides were started when we wrote them, they were equity and interest rates were equity is high, interest rates are low. The landscape's changed now that interest rates have gone up. But yeah, we try to lay out all their options so then they can say, and you can help them decide cash out refinance might make sense, or you might not qualify for a HELOC because of this, and maybe a reverse mortgage makes more sense. So we go into the comparisons of eligibility and what might work for an individual.
Okay. And Angela and even Jackie, can I circle back to you on this particular question? Are there times when clients might come in seeking a reverse mortgage, and based upon the information shared, refinancing seems that should be a consideration as well? Do you ever see those kinds of scenarios, Angela?
Yes, we do. So, if someone comes in and they want to talk about, you know, they might be having financial issues, or they might just need to tap into some equity for whatever reason, but their thought was around reverse mortgage. We do talk to them about other things, right? Have you explored other options? Have you looked into a home equity line of credit? Have you thought about refinancing? Have you looked into a grant program? So we do ask those questions, as something that HUD definitely wants us to do, in asking those questions up front. Have you considered other options? As we know that for most people, a reverse mortgage is the last resort. Someone typed into the Q&A that it's a equity stripping. It's true. Yes, it's equity stripping, but it's the only resource for some people, and they have to tap into whatever resource they have. And in that, it would be the equity in their home. So we do discuss different options with them.
Okay. And Jackie, does that ever come up?
Yeah. Yes, and I would just add that is the beauty of following the HECM protocol as you're going through your counseling session, because there is a requirement that we talk about these other options. And it's a beautiful waterfall of the more simple options going all the way down to the reverse mortgage being at the bottom one, the more complex and cumbersome of all of them. And so as you're going through your counseling session, you've talked about all of these things. Many of them the senior has eliminated before they ever come for counseling, and they'll make you aware of that. But going through all of these and making sure no stone is unturned is really important as part of that counseling session.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Cora, going back to the guides again, folks love these guides as a resource for their counseling. And if I remember correctly, Cora, I think you mentioned that the guides can be shipped to housing counseling agencies at no cost. Is that correct? Am I right in that?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So this question is, and to the person who posted this question, I hope I capture your question accurately, but I believe what I'm saying is that agencies may at times, it's wonderful that CFPB will ship these guides to housing counseling agencies at no cost, but then some agencies might also opt to mail those same guides to homeowners who might be in need of them or could benefit from the information. So the question is, are these guides able to be requested on the homeowner's behalf from CFPB? Another way of looking at that question would be, can homeowners request them directly from CFPB?
So they can, but I don't think we send them as one. So these are for bulk orders. For individual, makes sense to just download. So we don't ship to individuals. We ship in bulk to agencies. Financial institutions actually order our materials quite often. They're a big um, group that orders our reverse mortgage materials. So unfortunately, no, it's just too small a quantity. We have to do, I think, in batches of 25.
Got you.
So,
Got you.
mhm.
Okay, that's helpful for, I hope that answered the question of the person who posed it. And what sort of outreach, Cora, is CFPB doing to promote the housing decision guides?
So we're meeting with housing counselors, that we're meeting with legal aid attorneys, we're meeting with area agencies on aging, which Jackie mentioned is a great resource for all of us to navigate aging of our loved ones or ourselves. We're really hoping to do a lot of co-branding, that community organizations co-brand. I mean, this is in the public sphere, and people unfortunately don't know that the CFPB is here. And so to have a community organization co-brand this gives it a lot of legitimacy in communities. And some communities don't love the federal government, and I for better or for worse, that's how it is. And so I think co-branding is a real opportunity to reach your community. And it could be a housing counseling agency, it can be a religious institution, it can be a Meals on Wheels site. Any kind of organization can co-brand this, and there's a guide that helps organizations just do it on their own without working with us.
Okay, okay,
So it's easy. Mhm.
great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then Jackie, I'm going to direct this one to you. Somebody posted a question, I believe, probably in response to your remarks about proprietary mortgages and having knowledge of what's out there. So is there a resource for proprietary reverse mortgages that you can sort of see at a glance, or what else is available besides HECM?
There's not a single resource. There are a lot of very large reverse mortgage lenders out there who do proprietary loans. So if you look at any of the HECM guides of the lenders, the top 100 lenders, probably the top 10 to 20 of those have a proprietary product. And so it's just a matter of outreach to them, to talk to them about their counseling needs. Because one of the things that is true of all of these is they want their borrowers to be educated, no matter if a lender is suggesting a HECM loan or proprietary loan. They want an educated borrower, and that's where counselors come in. So outreach to them individually is probably going to be your best bet.
Okay, okay, great. And then Angela, I'll give this one to you. Someone asked, what are the top advantages and disadvantages of reverse mortgages in your mind? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
So let's start with the advantage is that someone gets to stay in their home. They get to tap into their equity if they need money for repairs or living, making modifications to their home, having medical bills that they need to pay off, just providing income for that person. So those are the advantages, right? And being able to age in place because that's where their members are, that's where they want to stay. The disadvantage, and it depends on how you look at it, it might not even be a disadvantage. If you want to leave generational wealth to someone, you're stripping the equity, right? Because it's a compound interest type of loan. So each month, the old interest gets added on to the new principal balance, and the loan balance gets higher and higher each month. So at some point, depending on how long someone lives, right? Reverse mortgages are tapped out when they do the calculations to age 99 up to our age 100. So they're looking at that. What does that look like? So over time, the equity reduces because we're living longer. And so there might not be any equity left to leave generational wealth. So that, to me, that's the only disadvantage, not being able to leave generational wealth for someone.
Okay, okay. That's a good point. That's an excellent point.
Karen, do you mind if I add something to that?
Sure, absolutely.
So also I just want to point out that reverse mortgages are not foolproof, right? And so sometimes they're marketed as you can die in your home, but there's still obligations that people have to meet when they have a reverse mortgage. And they can lose their home to foreclosure. So you still have to pay your property taxes and insurance. Your home has to be your principal place of residence, and you have to keep the home in good repair. And so those obligations are real. And so it's not just no monthly payments, because that's really what's focused on, and that's a huge benefit to reverse mortgages. But there are some other obligations besides this monthly payment that opens up money for the older adult when they don't have to make it, but there are other obligations that they have to make. So those are also discussed in our CFPB resources, and I'm sure there are other resources out there, but I just wanted to highlight that as a red flag.
Jackie, you look like you might have something to say about that.
No, I agree 100%. And the other thing that came to mind is that when you're talking disadvantages, reverse mortgages are expensive loans when it comes down to it. And compared to any other kind of mortgage loans, there is a lot of upfront cost in that loan that gets packed into it. And so in a lot of cases, it would not be advantageous for someone who's not going to remain in their home for quite a long time to think about a reverse mortgage. So it is a consideration also. Do you want to live in your home forever? Or is this a short-term fix that you're looking for? And in that case, you might need to consider some of the other options.
I think the average length of a reverse mortgage, the last data point I have, and I don't have the date of it, is 7 years. So again, having that conversation is important.
Okay. Well, this part of the conversation is a nice segue for this next question, and I'll just open it up. How about that to all of you, if anyone has a comment? But the question is, what resources are out there to help the survivors settle up a reverse mortgage when the homeowner passes away? And this person says, the most complaints I get about reverse mortgages come from the survivors who are trying to settle up after someone passes away. Any thoughts about that?
Just one quick answer to make another plug. The reverse mortgage discussion guide lays this out in consumer facing language. So it's a complicated answer. It's gotten simpler over time, but the reverse mortgage discussion guide goes into that. And we also have on the consumerfinance.gov website Ask CFPB questions. And that's one of them. One of the most popular ones is what happens when I die with my reverse mortgage. So those are two places you can find a consumer facing answer, but I'll pass it to Angela and Jackie.
So from a counseling perspective, we'd be happy to work with that heir to make contact with the mortgage company and work through the process with them. We've done it many, many times. It is a complex process, but creating a relationship with the heir and that mortgage company so that they can step through the process together is incredibly helpful.
And just adding to what Cora and Jackie said, as housing counselors, we also work with the beneficiaries to get them through surrogate's court. Because if you die, without leaving a will or leaving having a life estate on that property, it has to. I'm speaking from a New York perspective. It has to go through probate court, and I think it might be the same thing across the country, where in order for the surviving child or whomever you're leaving it to be able to work with the servicer and be able to sell the house, be able to get a loan on the house, it has to go through surrogate's court and have those people to get letters of administration in order to do anything with that home. And we spoke about that earlier. How do we encourage family members to be part of the counseling? I always want to make sure that their children who are going to be out there later on, and encourage them and invite them, make sure that they're invited to the counseling session, so they do know what next steps are going to be, after the homeowner passes, right? Is it that you have to now start setting money aside? If you're going to think about keeping this home, where's the money going to come from to pay off that debt? Because reverse mortgage is a loan that has to be paid off at some point, and that point is usually at debt.
And there's a
Okay.
timeline
So,
too.
yes,
Don't forget
yes,
there's like
1
a
year,
clock
yes.
tolling. So
Right.
it's not, you know, the heirs or the state need to be aware of that timeline that HUD has set through their regulations.
Right. And it's 1 year, but you have an additional 6 months, and then you can apply for an additional 3 and an additional 3. Although we were seeing it gone longer, but we like people to be prepared and know that we're working within this 1 year timeline to take care of the house after debt or whatever.
Okay. Okay. And I think we have maybe time for just one more. And this will be both for you, Angela and Jackie. The question is from a counselor who primarily does foreclosure prevention counseling at their agency, and based upon the question appears to be thinking about perhaps also off being a reverse mortgage counselor. So the question for the two of you, and this is just providing some insights for this person, how does HECM counseling compare in terms of trauma and fear in a client that the client may be experiencing, you know, and the negatives that a client may be experiencing? And, you know, certainly, you know, if you're facing foreclosure, there's some fear and some anxiety that the client brings to the conversation. So this person wants to know, you know, compare and contrast, how is it for a counselor? And again, in this scenario, she's been doing foreclosure prevention counseling, and if she were to transition over or add.
So for counselors, a HECM counseling session is generally a really pleasant experience because you're talking to someone who has equity in their home. So HECM is a different animal in that respect. However, the HECM default client is very much like your typical foreclosure client. They're experiencing the same kind of problem, either not paying their taxes or insurance, or not maintaining their home that has caused their home to go into default. So you're struggling with the same kind of scenario, and maybe even with fewer options available to that person than you have with a forward mortgage. So the reverse mortgage counseling sessions are kind of pleasurable. It's kind of a different scenario. They're the haves in this scenario. So they are very, very different. Angela, you're right on the front lines. You might want to speak to that.
Yeah. Yes, Jackie, true. That's true. Unless the person is facing foreclosure and reverse mortgage is the only option for them to get out of that foreclosure, then it's still a foreclosure conversation. It does come over into the reverse mortgage world. The person who is asking, we're faced with that as well. How do we get them out of that foreclosure? How do we use reverse mortgage? Is reverse mortgage the only option that's going to take them out? And oftentimes that's the only option for someone, and who's older, to get out of that foreclosure and keep that home. It's through reverse mortgage. But as Jackie said, talking about them, you're going to get this. You're not going to have to make monthly payments on a mortgage, not the taxes, the insurance, and the water here in New York, but just not having to make that principal and interest payment each month. It's a pleasure for a lot of people. So yes, it's the sweeter side of the counseling world.
It looks like we lost Karen. So I just, the slide that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cora.
I was just going to say the next slide has some of the links to our tools and then some HUD resources. So I'm going to pass it to Shauna.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm here. We're always a team. Thank you both, all three of you, so much for all of the great information, and the counseling questions were amazing this time. So yeah, lots of great CFPB, lots of great HUD resources here on the HUD Exchange. We provided you with quite a number. There is an open board still on 6 Connect, so please check that out, and we would love to hear from you. And then we do want to make sure that you know that we want you to come back at 4 o'clock Eastern for the National Industry Standards. It'll be a short presentation, and it will also be a lot of stakeholder feedback that you can provide us through the Mentimeter application. So stay connected with HUD. There's all these great resources here on HUD Exchange as well as HUD.gov. And thanks so much for attending, and we'll see you at the next session.
Thanks, everyone.